Welcome to Behind the Response. This is a series where we are pulling back the curtain of Bethel Global Response and sharing insights and details and behind the scenes of a disaster response. We are hoping that this conversation is beneficial to you, whether you are desiring to step into the field of disaster response or just curious about what a response looks like. And today I am with our very own Ron Berry, and we are going to be having a conversation about disaster response, crisis response, search and rescue, since these are areas that Ron has a wealth of wisdom in and years of experience. So I am excited to jump into this conversation today. Before we dive into all of my questions, Ron, I would love to hear just a little bit of background about who you are, where you come from, what you've done, how you ended up with Bethel Global Response, and then we'll go from there.
Well, it's been pretty interesting. Like I said, I grew up in Southern California at the beach, surfing and all that good stuff, and then graduated from high school and then moved to the Caribbean for 4 years and had the privilege of sailing across the Atlantic for twice actually, and then coming back to the States and moving to the mountains, and basically that's where my mountain rescue, search and rescue career started.
Wow. And you just thought, I'm going to just sign up for this, or was there something that piqued that interest?
I just had a heart that I wanted to help people, even at the beach, out surfing and stuff like that, but just wanting to help people. And so got into with the National Ski Patrol, which I'm still part of, and a search and rescue team, which was up in Central Oregon, called the Camp Sherman Hasty Team. Okay. And so I was with them for 22 years. Wow. As ended up as a coordinator. Wow. Like I said, I'm still with National Ski Patrol. Yeah.
22 years is a long time in the world of search and rescue, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I was looking up the other day, and I think first responders in general, in disaster response specifically, like the retention rate is really low. I think it's like 50 to 70% burn out within the first 5 years of crisis response, that's a large majority. It is. I mean, that is a very large majority. So I'm curious, like 22 years, search and rescue, I think is probably one of the most intense, because you're coming in after this disaster has struck, and you're in the depths of it with people, with human lives, not necessarily mucking out homes like we often do, exactly. But you're dealing with real lives. I'm just curious how you continued on for 22 years. Like, what was the thing that spurred you on? I'm just sure there were times where you're like, this is challenging, or maybe not. Maybe there was a grace the whole 22 years. But could you share a little bit about that, like how you stuck with it for so long?
I think for me, every incident, starting out with ski patrol and search and rescue, every incident is different. Yeah. You're dealing with sometimes not a good turnout. And then, that was one of the neat things that with my wife, she's a huge supporter of me, what I do. Yeah. And I think a really big thing is, having faith. I think if you look at people that have a really strong faith behind them, that they can last longer. Yes. Like in the field, some people, like you said, only last 5 to 7 years, and then they're tired of it, they see it. But for me, it just inside, it really, I really wanted to do this, and I have a saying, people know that I have a saying is, I want to be with somebody on the worst day of their life. Yeah. That's my happy place. No matter if it's a fatality or whatever, but you're bringing people home to their families, because search and rescue, obviously you're out in the wilderness more often than not, on top of a mountain, whatever, that would be. And that carries into disaster relief. Yeah. And so I actually was doing disaster relief 3 years prior to even being a search and rescue, a ski patrol. Oh. So like 25 years into disaster relief world.
Where were you doing disaster relief prior?
Well, we actually had our own, at that time, a nonprofit called First Responders International. Okay. And we did globally. And so mostly we were in Asia.
Oh, wow.
After typhoons and stuff like that.
Yeah, like
The
monsoon
Philippines,
season.
Sri Lanka after the Banda Aceh
Wow.
earthquake and tsunami.
Yeah. That, and in those parts of the world, there's not as much resource, is there?
No, and that's
Yeah.
that's one of the differences about going to another country, and you don't want to say a third world country, but when you go over there, or people from the United States go to another country to do it, you're able to do a lot more things there as compared to the United States, because our infrastructure in the United States is
Yeah.
such that we don't have to do medical with Bethel Global Response, but
Right.
if you go to another country,
They're going to need
you
that.
do everything.
Yes.
You do everything. I mean, I did stuff as a medic that I would never be able to do in the United States, because that's what they need. They
Yeah.
need the help.
Right.
And you're going, you have supervision,
Right.
but they just need boots on the ground and
Yeah.
help.
Yeah, it's amazing. In Asia, what you said, monsoon and earthquakes and all of that. Was there any specific story about that season of leading First Responders International that was just really marking? And I think it's pretty profound that, as not necessarily having a ton of experience, it sounds like you just started your own nonprofit, right?
Yes,
Is
yes.
that how it's okay?
Yes.
I had never realized that's part of the story, is that you were just like, was it just that something was in your heart and you're like, I just want to go do this. Let's just do it.
Well, you watch, on TV, and
Yeah.
something comes across, as a bulletin, massive earthquake in Turkey,
Yeah.
or, a, category 5, cyclone, hitting the Philippines.
Yeah.
And so that just, stirred me, man, I want to be part of that.
Yeah.
And so that's what we started to do. We made a nonprofit, and we had a lot of help getting it started. But yeah, we just went out and did it.
And you didn't necessarily like have any certifications, or had you taken courses, or what had that
In
looked like?
disaster relief or anything?
Yeah.
No, that was just what I knew in my medical background,
Okay.
search and
As
rescue
an
background.
EMT. Okay. That makes sense. Wild.
Right.
Okay. Back to that season of your first responses, right? Your first responses, you're learning so much, right? Because it's all new. I'm curious, was there a story, a situation, a person that was pretty marking in those formative years of your career?
Probably the first one was when we went to the Philippines after a typhoon went through, and flew into Davao, the island of Mindanao. And I had a friend that was on the search and rescue team back in Central Oregon that actually lived in the Philippines. And so he asked if I could come over. And so I did come over, and he goes, we're going to go to the north end of the island, to a town called Bagunga that hasn't been seen yet. And on a good day, the travel time is maybe an hour and a half. And it took us over 24 hours to get there,
As it
just
was,
because
as it
of
does.
everything that was going on. And then even trying to cross the river to get over to where we needed to go to a camp, there was a birthing nurses that were at this clinic that they had been there for 3 days, 4 days, and they were needing to be changed out. So the gentleman's name was Dan Bray. And so we drove there, we got there, and they just go, okay, we're out, we're gone. And I go, what? So where's everybody else? Oh, you're the only person in this little clinic. That's a classic, picture, in India, the one light bulb there,
Yeah.
and just people in beds. And they just go, all you have to do is do IVs, and just make sure people get the meds that they need, and people that are coming in still injured, treat them. And Dan just goes, I've got to leave. I've been doing this for, a week now, and I'm just burnt out,
I was exhausted, yeah.
And so, yeah, I did, stayed there. And so I was the only medic that was there, just watching out over, I think it was 12 beds. It wasn't a huge place, but
Yeah.
it was 12 people, and people constantly coming in.
Wow.
And after about 2 weeks, I guess it was, the doctor that had been there actually got pulled out because she had been there for 24/7, and she was just getting a little bit tired, loopy, whatever you want to call it. And so they pulled her out. And so that's why the reason that I was the only one there.
Okay.
And after the 2 weeks, the International Red Cross came in,
After 2 weeks of just you.
just me. And they came in and they just go basically, okay, we got this. And I go, great. What do you need me to do? Oh, no, you can go. And I was scheduled still to be there for 3 weeks.
Wow, that's a long deployment.
It's a very long deployment. Now we don't do as long,
Yeah.
but to me it was okay.
Yeah.
And I was sleeping just in a cot, and it was just raining and stuff like that constantly.
Oh my goodness.
But anyway, they came in and they just go, "We don't need you anymore. Thank you." I said, okay. So every night and every morning I would go to the incident command meetings with the Philippine military.
Yeah.
And so just listen, not necessarily talk, but then at the end of it, I went in there, and talked to the colonel, and I go, "Sir, my name is Ron Berry, and I've been working down at the clinic down the street there." And so I go, "Is there anything that I could do with you?" And he sits there with his arms, crossed like this, and he goes, "Mr. Ron, what do you bring to the table?"
What do you bring to the table?
Exactly. So I'm medic and search and rescue, and without even hesitation, he just goes over, "Michael, come over here." And so I ended up being with the Philippine military for 2.5 weeks.
Wow.
And every day they had their big 6-bys and a Jeep with their machine guns, because there was Tamil Tigers and stuff were in the back country, but they said they would not hurt rescuers. And so we would go into the jungle and just do medical clinics every day.
Oh my
And
goodness.
and they just adopted me, and it was just amazing. After about a week, "Mr. Ron, would you like to go to the hot tubs with us?" And
Oh, that's amazing.
no, thank you, this and that. So did that for, like I said, for 2 weeks, and then
Wow.
that deployment was over, and I actually got to meet the same Michael the very next year when we went to Tacloban after Typhoon Haiyan went through.
What year was that, or roughly?
What was that? Like, that was 14 years ago now.
Oh,
I
okay.
think it was maybe not that far.
Early
But
2000s.
going back the next year with another organization called Team Rubicon.
Yes.
And so that was just an amazing thing, and we landed on the ground there and went to the airport, Tacloban Airport, where we were stationed. And they just go, well, I won't go into the whole story how it went, but when we came back, they asked if we could set up a triage in the tower of the airport.
Huh.
And so we did, and I walked in there with the Team Rubicon people, paramedic from Durango, Colorado, and a
Yeah.
French Foreign Legion medic. We
Okay.
went in there, and I seen this medic over there just getting ready to take people onto the tarmac, and he turns around, and it's Michael. And he sits there, he goes, "Mr. Ron, you've come back." And I just
yeah.
looked at the guy and go, "Yeah, that's right."
That's amazing. That's
So
amazing.
yeah, so that was the first 2 deployments really with BGR.
With BGR.
No, excuse me,
Sorry.
with First Responder
Yeah,
International.
yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of the disaster response world, isn't it? That you
Yes.
often end up in another disaster and you see all these people that you bonded with the last time.
It is. It's the disaster world, relief workers. It's a small world.
It really is.
In the United States, you see people constantly when you do go to disasters. You haven't seen in a year or whatever, but then you just never left each other.
Yeah.
You just start gelling and working right away.
Totally. It's beautiful. I am curious because I know you have many, 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 many more years and experience than I do. But I think from even just the experience that I've seen the reality of a disaster, and it can be so sobering and so striking. And it's almost even hard to comprehend what you're seeing sometimes when you're in the midst of it.
Right.
And, and you come home from a 5-week deployment. I'm curious, how do you process that? And I think it's important for people in this field or even curious about the field to understand how to take practical steps in that direction, because obviously it's challenging, of how you position yourself, process the situation when you're coming home after being in a situation where you're seeing, hundreds of people sick, or the disaster that has struck a specific area, but how you keep the lens of hope and also just that transition back home to a comfortable bed and you're not concerned about, your safety necessarily. How do you do that?
I think a lot of it, for me, is faith.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is, in the disaster world or the first responder world, you compartmentalize a lot.
Yeah.
And so you just put it behind you, you remember it, You're never going to forget it. I can almost remember, over 20 years, probably 7/8 of the missions that I went on, whether they were good or bad.
Yeah.
So it has a lot to do with your family.
Your support system.
Do you have the support of your family? In my case, my kids as well. And, we would get I'd get calls at 2 a.m, to do something, and the kids all knew it, and it's kind of neat, because they were very proud of what I was doing.
Yeah.
But I think it has a lot to do with family. How is your family, poised for you to go out?
Yeah.
And in my case, my wife goes out a lot with us.
She's amazing.
And so that's a huge benefit to work together.
Yeah.
And then be able to come home together, and then you guys can process, we can process when we get home.
Because it's almost a lifestyle when you're in disaster response, I feel like, because of how much it's not a 9 to 5 where you get to just clock in, clock out. You're kind of on call.
Yeah.
And then you're gone, and you're unsure of the circumstances, and you're unsure of where you might end up, and when you might come home, and etc. So it does take a lot of support, especially when you have a family. You're not a single person.
Exactly. And a lot of times you might just be on a church floor.
Yeah, the uncomfortability
going
of that.
back to the Philippines, when all the beds were, filled, there was just a little place that I was outside.
Yeah.
And it was just like pallets on the ground, that I was able to put a sleeping bag down, and it was just wet everywhere because it was constantly raining,
Yeah.
And so, it's just every incident is different.
Yeah, it is.
Sometimes it's a hotel, other times it's a floor, other times it could be on the ground in a hammock or a hammock.
Yep, you never know. They're flexible.
Right,
Having to
exactly.
remain flexible.
Rigidly flexible.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Okay, we've talked a little bit about response prior to Bethel Global Response, but you've been with Bethel Global Response in some capacity. I think it's like for at least 13 years, right?
14 years since the very beginning, when 14. Jordan Lycan, which is Jordan Pacilio now, was a director.
Right, and she was the one that really sort of founded or helped found Bethel Global Response.
Yes.
So you've been here since the initiation.
Since the very beginning, as a volunteer.
Just as a volunteer. Had you heard of BGR?
I had not heard from BGR, but one of the gentlemen that basically got me, for a better word, into Bethel Global Response, we had traveled the world doing disasters.
Okay, so there was a connection.
There was a connection, and he came to Redding for a season. Yeah. He was good friends with Jordan Van Lycan, because she was with Samaritan's Purse, and this person had done many deployments with that organization. Yeah. And so she knew it, or he knew that. Yeah. And so he would we talk every week, and he kept on saying, "Wow, there's something going on here at Bethel, like they want to start a disaster relief organization." I go, "Wow, that's great."
That's amazing.
And he just kept on calling me and telling me, and then one time he called up and he's just going, "Yeah, we are starting something. We're actually going to deploy." And I go, "Yeah, what are you going to do?" "We're going to go to Africa. Heidi's requested us, Yeah. And so he's going, "Oh, I'm so happy for you, Woody, this and that, and just talking with him." And he didn't say anything until the very end of the conversation. And then he just goes, "Oh, by the way, he would love you and your wife, Kim, to come with us."
Amazing.
And I go, "What?"
Were you guys still living in Oregon?
We were living in Oregon, but we would come down to the meetings for Bethel Global Response. It's a 5.5 hour drive. We would drive down for the 1.5 hour meeting and drive right back home. That's how committed we felt, both of us, my wife and I, felt to this.
That's amazing. What was different about Bethel Global Response than prior disaster response?
The faith-based.
Yeah. What does that
bringing in the Holy Spirit into everything from the very beginning, planning of the, what we're going to do when we're on the ground with the folks that were affected with that. Yeah. Other organizations, they're amazing, but they're a lot different. Team Rubicon is mostly ex-paramilitary, military, and first responders. Right. And so it was a culture shock for me to even just deploy with them. They're Army people. Yeah. But again, they took me in. So it has a lot to do with your faith when you're out.
Yeah. I've only deployed with Bethel Global Response in the disaster world, and it is different when it's presence based, because everything you do, it seeps that and is the reward of that.
Yep.
Right. And so,
and you see the fruit of it every day when you go out from your morning briefing from your team. It starts at the beginning with your team.
Yep.
On bringing in the Holy Spirit in every morning. We would listen, which we do, and we still do. Listen to worship. And then our pastoral. Is making sure that everybody's doing good for the day.
Yeah.
And at the end of every day, we have another briefing. How did everything go? And we just break everything down. We don't want things to fester, and so we want to get things taken care of right then. So when we come back home, it's just not a big scene when we do our after action reports, and meetings and stuff like that. So taking care of it then while you're there. Right. And it helps to gel the teams.
Yeah. Keep a good environment and culture for everyone to be working in.
Right.
Okay. I'm curious. I guess this could be for any part and, with any organization that you've deployed with, but maybe you have one with Bethel Global Response, but was there a time out on the field that you felt like you made a mistake? And what did you learn from that in that experience?
Well, I think every day you're making
minor mistakes.
You're making mistakes going along, but it's never to the point of somebody's life is in danger.
Right.
We always want to be sure of that. And that's where, we have our team, everybody has their position of what they're doing. And so just that safety. I mean, we were down in Rockport after a hurricane went through there. And we went to a particular house, and it was surrounded by water. And it was just really messy, swampy, dangerous. There was metal around. And then our director, Carl Ladd, was talking with the homeowner. And this is where gelling of the team, we could just look at each other and know, what we're thinking, like Carl's talking to the homeowner, myself and another gentleman, we're walking around doing a safety for the property.
Yeah.
And it just wouldn't have been safe for the team to go in there. And so I just had to look at Carl as he looked at me, as he's still talking with the homeowner, and I just go like this, and it was done. And he just had to tell the owner that, this is just not safe for us. And that's really hard. Because, she's trying to get her house, to where she could live in it at very least, tarping or whatever, might be.
Right.
And so we couldn't do that particular one. And so we all got in the trucks and we left, and it was very heartbreaking because she was just completely in tears that we couldn't help. But we just said, we will get somebody here to help you. It's just that our team is not able to do it, safety-wise.
Yeah.
We weren't going to forget her. But we got in the trucks, we drove down the street, and Carl just goes, man, I think we got to stop and just break the team and see how they're doing, because it hit them really hard too, that, wow, we can't help them. We can't help her. So that's where the team is so important to gel. Everybody has their position of what they're doing.
Which that's so real, because you often show up in a crisis and it's huge.
Right.
It's overwhelming. The amount of need is beyond one organization, one person's ability to do something.
Exactly.
And the ability to be okay with that in your heart and trust that God is going to intervene and still meet those people's needs is huge. I remember last summer when we were in Porto Alegre, Brazil, after the huge flood, and we're walking around, and the amount of homes and we know we're only there for 2 weeks, and we're partnering with the church, and you're looking across and thinking, this is going to take years. is really where my mind went, at least. And obviously the finances of this area are very poor, so who knows if they're ever going to rebuild a home or have a place that they can come back to. And having to go, instead of being succumbed by the overwhelm, taking on the stance. I actually remember Elijah saying to the pastors of the church when we were there, where he was sort of helping them, consult with them about how their church could, help the community, et cetera. He said, do for one what you wish you could do for everyone.
Yes.
And I feel like that's almost the motto you have to take. If you're, responding to a hurricane, and you're talking with a homeowner and you're looking around at the neighborhood and you're realizing, man, I can't help this person. Okay, well, what can I do for somebody else that I wish I could do for this person? And taking on that stance of just, it sometimes is the one. And that in itself is enough for a deployment. And
absolutely.
I think you have to remind yourself that sometimes, because otherwise you go in and you think, did I even make a difference? Did I even do anything? Did I leave a footprint on this place? We spent 24 hours traveling to this one island. And oh my gosh, was it even worth it? And you have to remind yourself, man, imagine if you were in that situation. If they just helped you, wouldn't you feel so loved, so seen, so taken care of? And we have to forget about the numbers sometime and go, if it was just for that one person, it was worth the deployment, it was worth the response, which can be hard to take on that mindset when you see the need is so large and so big. But and like you're saying, important to connecting with the team, like connecting with your people about, hey, how are you feeling? How are you processing this? You know?
Exactly.
One other question. We often, obviously on deployments, we're working with volunteers, and sometimes volunteers that have gone through Bethel Global Response Core 1 and Core 2 trainings and, are ready to deploy. And then sometimes we're dealing with volunteers on the ground, on the field, that maybe it's their hometown that's been affected. I'm curious, is there something in your experience working with volunteers where you go, oh, I wish that volunteers understood this a little bit more about disaster response? Maybe it's just a piece of advice that you would give them.
I think, the thing that I had seen, when we use volunteers, like at, if it was North Carolina, and we're partnering with an organization, and they use the volunteers of that city that had the disaster, and they want, they're all, gung-ho, they want to help. Everybody wants to help. And they have their own ideas on how they want to do it, and it's just, you need to try to keep them in check. But their heart is right there. So you have to just sort of overlook some of the things that they do, but you have to direct them if they're under your control for that day. You have to make sure that they're doing stuff that is safe.
Keeping them safe.
Keeping them safe. And I think that's one neat thing with Bethel Global Response is our team, and we're a faith-based organization, obviously, but going into disasters and taking a phrase from Heidi, for the one, like you were just talking about. It doesn't matter if we're there for 2 weeks and, there's just one highlighted homeowner that was really amazing, but working hard for that person is the focus. It's not the next door neighbor. It's not down the street. People are bringing water, people are bringing clothes, and that's, that's one of the things, like in a disaster, especially in the U.S., one of the things you don't bring to a disaster is water, or people want to bring clothes. Because if you look at what happens is all their clothes are coming, which is a great, the heart of the person doing that, the people that are doing that, it's great. But a lot of times those clothes are out in a parking lot, and they get wrecked, and there are companies that are bringing in semi-truckloads of water, that type of stuff. So just being able to bring what we carry in VGR to those people that might not, maybe they don't go to church, or maybe they do go to church and it's just a different way that they look at it. But just loving on them as the same is with the team that we brought down there.
It's beautiful. We've talked a little bit about safety, the safety, not being able to go and help that person, this keeping your team safe, etc. Has there been a time, and I'm sure in search and rescue there's definitely been a time, but has there been a time in just your career at large where you didn't feel safe in sort of how you processed that, how you handled that situation? Maybe got yourself into a situation where you're like, oh goodness, I thought this was safe, this is not safe. Abort mission.
Right. Well, that sort of goes maybe back to the search and rescue and ski patrol. One incident, we had, and it sticks with you. Like I said, you compartmentalize it. But again, your team, as with Bethel Global Response, your team is number one. You want them to be safe. Right. And I use a phrase, your misfortune is not to be our demise. You know, we were dispatched to an avalanche. We got to the avalanche, you know, I had the team, I had 3 people, myself, and we seen the person. He survived the avalanche, but it was not safe for us to go in.
He was like underneath the snow.
He wasn't underneath, he was semi-buried.
Okay.
But you know, he could talk. And fine, just thinking about that, it's just, but it wasn't safe for our team to go in because there was another team already headed up to the top to control more of it.
Yeah, from falling.
From falling, you know, which called cornices. And so they controlled those cornices, and the cornices came down and literally buried them, and we couldn't save them. You know, and so that's, you know, that's really hard to do that. But, you know, again, your team is number one. You want to make sure that it's safe, and it's an unfortunate that, you know, he wasn't able to, we couldn't get to him even after it went through in time. He had, you know, suffocated.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's really hard.
What do you do in that moment when you realize, oh, we can't?
What did I do?
Or what can you,
and well,
what
that,
do you
I mean,
do?
I could literally, that's what I said, what did I do?
Yeah.
You know, did I not go in there? You know, would we be okay even if we would got caught? You know, maybe not so bad, you know?
Yeah, you start to question
Could
it
we
a
have
little
said questioning what you did? But that was your decision at that time because I was the command of that scenario right then. So that's really hard, you know?
Yeah.
In deployments, it's not always like that because there is a lot of safety unless there's certain times where, you know,
not as
again,
immediate.
if you're international,
Yeah.
if you're doing food distribution, you know, things can get out of hand, you know, and then you really have to watch out what's going on. And that's what we train in our Core 1 and 2. When there's time to leave, you know, there's, you know, certain times where you just have to drop and go, leave everything, and you just go.
Black zone, red zone.
Exactly. Exactly. And so, you know, again, we want to be able to take care of our teams.
Yeah. Wow. It's wild how many, I feel like, stories I hear from you. There's like, I feel like a tissue box. You just keep pulling out more and more of these stories.
Yeah.
Is there any, I guess, last piece of advice or encouragement you would give to somebody that's has that heart that you had years and years ago that wanted to help people, that wants to step into the work or the volunteering or you know, the career of crisis and disaster response? Is there some little piece of wisdom you would leave with them?
I would think, you know, is to start slow. You know, if there's, like if it was BGR, if you want to start working with BGR, just watch what we do. You know, watch some of the videos that you guys have done, you know, on what we have done. Is that something that you want to do? Yeah. And will you be able to deal with it, you know, when you do come home?
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, it's just go slow. You know, don't just dive into it. You know, like, you know, when we're on scene and we're doing stuff, you know, people have that energy. They just want to go. You know, slow it down, you know, and just, I will say, you know, go with the flow. Learn as much as you can, you know, start out by just maybe being in the background, doing, you know, looking at other organizations as well, you know, what they do, how they do it.
Right.
But just see if this is something that interests you, that you are willing to go and sleep on a floor or sleep in a hammock, you know, that type of thing. You know, can you do that?
Sometimes it looks more glamorous than it really is, huh?
Yes.
Sounds more glamorous. I know personally, I remember being in high school and watching the movie Hotel Rwanda. This is what sparked my interest. And it looks so fulfilling and so glamorous to be the one that's going and helping and saving these lives and being this, you know, being this person to these people. And I love that piece of advice of the stay humble, stay low.
Exactly.
Stay slow.
Yeah.
You don't have to rush in. You don't have to be a, you know, big, grand, you know, person in the experience. Right. You can kind of start slow, put your toes in, because like we said, it's actually really challenging work as much as it is fulfilling.
Yes.
So fulfilling, right?
There's
a lot of challenge in it. And you often come back from deployments or from helping people, and it changes the way you see the world and the way you go about life, and it's life altering. And so I love that piece of advice of it's okay to not dive into the depths of it, but to figure out a rhythm that works.
Right.
And a pace that's actually going to be sustainable for a life in disaster response.
And checking yourself, like I said, there's a lot of conditions that, that are not favorable.
Yeah.
Like when we were down in Rockport, so hot. Excuse me, in Rockport, Louisiana.
Oh, yeah.
So hot.
So hot, so humid.
And there's no air conditioning,
Y'all,
and you're in a room with 20 other people, and it's just hot and stuff. It's 100 degrees and 100% humidity. We were doing that deployment there, and we come back one day. It was the second day, and Heather was with us, who was our deputy director, and we come back to the hotel, to the church.
To the church floor.
To the church floor.
Yeah.
And the pastor's wife comes up to Heather and just goes, "Hey, I think we're going to get air conditioning. We might get a generator today." And Heather just, Heather was amazing in what she did and how she did things. But she was straightforward. She goes, oh no, don't promise something you can't keep, because these guys are in this room. So it was just super
Sleeping
fun.
in it, working in it, living in it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's so real. It can be stretching.
Exactly. It could be very stretching for people.
I was not on that deployment, but I remember that deployment because of how many stories I've heard about that deployment. And specifically, you guys had just driven too, like 30 plus hours to get there.
Straight there.
So I'm like, just all the things added up would have been
right, exactly
a lot to take in. So, oh man, well, Ron, thanks so much for popping in and sharing so much of your wisdom and stories and insight with us. I know that people will take lots from this, and I hope that it really impacts the next even people that are hoping to step into this field of disaster response.
And thank you for what you're doing too. I mean, getting exposure. We haven't really, we've had so much exposure in the last year, out of 14 years, that it's been amazing. So you've been doing an amazing job as well.
Thanks, Ron. Go team. That's what I have to say. Go team. Takes a whole team.
Exactly.
Awesome.